Hello. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, maybe? How are we all doing? Welcome to another weekly live stream. Today, I thought I would take the opportunity to do a live Q&A. It's been about a year since I last did one of those. I think the last time I actually did it was right as the pandemic started in April of last year. And I had this idea of wanting to do these weekly and regular live streams and whatnot. And here we finally are. I've spent a year doing a lot of live streams on extra sort of networks and doing a lot with Adobe Live and other sort of conference things and behind the scenes stuff. And this setup has grown and evolved, and I've had a lot of fun playing around and building it up. But this is still very much an experiment. And even the weekly aspect of it is a way of keeping myself accountable. So I hope you guys are doing well. I posted this on my stories yesterday that I was going to do a live stream with a live Q&A. And yeah, I thought this is a good opportunity. On other live streams, I will have various different guests involved, and we can talk through and look at their work and kind of see the creative process and the workflows that people are working on. But also there'll be times when it might just be me, and I might be showing some of my own workflows and processes. And there may be times where I'm not able to keep it up to weekly, as may have been the case today. Had a meeting earlier and it clashed with the times, so hence the slightly later time. But anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. As I said, I posted this on my Instagram stories yesterday that I was going to do a live Q&A. So I'm just going to jump in there because there are a few questions that came in. And I've also been working with a little bit of a plugin using the live chat from another YouTube channel, Aaron Parecki, and he's created, along with the developer, this sort of on-screen chat system. And I've kind of hacked it together and changed the layout and the way that it looks for my own branding and style. So hopefully when we get to the YouTube chat, we'll get that working. But for the moment, let's go through some of the Instagram story stuff. And I should probably also check that you guys can hear, right? Let me have a scroll through on the chat so far. I think we are all working well. So anyway, so there was a number of responses that came through on Instagram, and quite a few people talking about similar things. So I'm kind of going to group together some questions. And starting off, of course, the part of my heart that is missing entirely right now is travel. And so there's a lot of questions of people saying, where is the first place we will travel to? And there's kind of two parts to that answer. There's the fact that there's where I would like to travel to first. And then there's the aspect of, will that country be accepting travelers? So of course, Japan is top of the list there. We are desperate to get back. Even more heartbroken for the fact that 2020 was the major sort of push and strategy for the channel with the Tokyo Olympics and with just the growth of tourism. I think it's done something ridiculous, like doubled every year for the last 7 years. It's crazy. It's a place that, of course, I've fallen in love with. Ellie's got all her family there. So we are desperate to get back to Japan. However, at the moment, no one's really allowed to enter Japan. It's a bit of a tricky one. Even for work, if we were doing some client-based stuff, there's not really much of a chance that we'll be able to get there. So I don't know if we can get back to Japan. Of course, that's where I would love to jump to straight away, and I would definitely be maximizing our time there. So then the second half of the question is, well, where do I think we would go based on where we might be allowed to go? And for the record, I have nothing planned, and I don't really have an idea of when, but I'm hopeful maybe by the end of the year we might make it somewhere. There's places that are on the list of ideas and trips that were supposed to happen but got cancelled and didn't happen. One of which is a Australia trip. So we're hoping to return to Australia in their summer months, so our winter months. Maybe that can happen end of the year. Yeah, not sure about that. Otherwise, visiting family, Thailand. It's been a little while since we've been there. That is potentially an option. But otherwise, yeah, don't really know. A question here about my glasses. I realize this is probably something kind of new for you guys, maybe. So I wear glasses when I'm using computer work or doing computer work all of the time. And I have them prescribed for screen-based work. I don't need them out and about. I don't need them when I'm using the camera. And of course, this last year, I've been doing a lot of screen-based stuff. And in fact, videos in front of the screen and live stream and whatnot. So you're seeing me in glasses a lot more. Anyway, these glasses are from Bailey Nelson. They are I think they're an Aussie brand, but they've got stores all over the world. And yeah, I just really, really enjoy them. Um, and yeah, pretty good set of specs. But I'm due for an eye test at some point. Um, Questions on podcasts that I listen to regularly. So this is kind of an interesting one. I've been wanting to have a podcast for years, longer than I've actually had a YouTube channel. One of the original ideas was I was going to set up a podcast, and when I was younger, with my brother and some friends, we had this idea of starting podcasts and things, but we never actually got around to doing it. And then, of course, I moved out, and many years down the line, started up this YouTube channel and whatever, and the podcast never really happened. I then tried to start a podcast again in 2018 and did a pilot episode, and again, never really started it. And I realized that one of the things about it was that I went through a lull period of not really listening to many podcasts. And so I didn't feel that inspired to be making podcasts. And I didn't think it was fair if I'm not listening to podcasts, how can I be making podcasts? And I started to listen to a lot more and went back to a few that I originally got started with. Number one on the list is the Chase Jarvis Live podcast. I am a massive fan of Chase. I've been following him for I think about 11 years now or so. One of the OG photography channels on YouTube, and has uh, transitioned and moved into other areas, and of course, setting up Creative Live and just all sorts of entrepreneurial stuff. But Chase is a great inspiration for me, and I love his podcast. I love the format of things. The fact that he can do quick sit downs for like 10 minutes and just chat to the phone and, record it, or he'll have like an hour and a half with, someone incredibly famous, like founders and CEOs of companies, just a whole breadth of content on his podcast. Um, Likewise, when Ellie and I are out walking, quite often we'll listen to someone like Brene Brown, and yeah, all the different sort of career tips and things that she's working on. And yeah, great podcast there. Um, if I'm traveling though, and it's been a while since they've uploaded, but the Attache podcast, I've recommended it multiple times in videos. I am a big fan of the Attache podcast, all about flying, travel, everything else. And yeah, just the whole experience. And if you do it whilst you're flying, there's something really soothing about listening to Paul and Alex talk about planes and airports and lounges and everything whilst you are also experiencing that. So yeah, the Attache podcast is definitely up there. Um, okay, a couple more questions from Instagram, and then I'll jump to the questions in the chat here. So there's quite a few people here who've asked about pitching content and getting work with various brands and stuff. And this is something that comes up a lot in Q&As, and I'm wondering if this is something that might be worth doing a dedicated video about. It's hard to gauge because I have been wrong about this in the past, where I've thought about videos that might be a good idea and I've spent a lot of time and put them into video format, only to realize afterwards that, it's probably better as a blog post, or it's better as a podcast or something like that. So I'm always kind of trying to gauge up the thing. But to reference back from previous Q&As that I've done, I'm going to skim over this because I have spoken at length about this. The way that I get a lot of my work in terms of professional work, paid work, commercial sponsorships on the channel, and also all sorts of things like that, always comes from a place of making the work that I want to be hired for first. So if, for example, let's take Adobe. they're a great example. I've done a lot of work with Adobe over the last year, and I will continue to do work with them over the coming year. They've renewed my membership or whatever as a Adobe insider. So I'm now part of a collective of a few creatives all over the world, and we'll be partnering with Adobe on various things going forward, doing a lot of Adobe Live stuff and just very much involved with Adobe on things. And that all started from going to one of their events and vlogging it and talking about it and, sharing my genuine excitement and enthusiasm for Adobe products and the event itself in a video, and meeting with the PR team who were there and talking with them and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm making, blah, blah, blah. 3 or 4 years later, they eventually reached back to me, and they tried to work with me in between, but I was living in Australia at the time and it was just a bit difficult. Eventually I came back, and yeah, they'd kept me on the list because they'd remembered the work that I'd put in off my own back beforehand was valuable to them, and they wanted to work with me on future stuff. And those are the best partnerships, by doing the work that you want to do. If you want to get into music videos, but you've never made a music video, how is anyone going to ever hire you if you've never made a music video? So go out and make a music video, and put yourself forward and make yourself known for that thing. Again, I've spoken at length about this a lot in the past. So I'll kind of leave it there on that, but make the thing that you want to make. There's a question here from Craig. So if you remember Destructive Pixels on YouTube, this is a massive throwback. We're going back like 5 years ago now. Craig, who is now the founder of Glen Affric Brewery, a fantastic brewery up in the north of England. And he is asking, or I'm assuming it is because it's come from the brewery account, what's one goal you'll only achieve if your audience keeps you accountable? And I thought this was a great question. It's really sort of, it brings into fact that so much of what I'm doing on YouTube, and even, right now I'm sat in a room on my own, I'm in, my desk, and I'm looking into my screen or my camera of not much really. And I'm reading the chat and I'm getting things, engrossed and whatever. But for the most part, I'm on my own, and I'm, doing this alone. So at what point do you become my sort of driving force at keeping me accountable? And this is it's kind of a difficult one, because on the one hand, I've always felt very unapologetically me on the channel. I never really like to make promises on things because I sometimes worry that I won't be able to keep them, but also I make the content that I'm looking forward to watching and making myself. But at the same time, I love the community that's come about, and there are many friends that I've made through this channel because of this close knit aspect and the community aspect. So there is value in including you guys, and that's something that I want to do a lot more. I want to share the journey and share the story and really sort of bring everyone along for the majority of things. So I guess one of the ways that I can have your input making me accountable is for sharing what it is that I'm working on. So, for example, if I'm working on a new set of title designs and motion graphics and things, I need to be sharing that with you, that I'm working on it. But also, if you guys are ever, confused about what it is that I do, because I've done this in the past a lot, I'll work for months on something, and then I'll just announce at the end, like, hey, it's ready. And this thing that I've put so much time and energy in gets released. But because I've not really spoken about it, no one else is really connected to it. And so they don't have that same excitement that I have. And that's my fault for not sharing that journey. So where I need to kind of keep you accountable to it is that I need to keep you on the loop on so much stuff. So if ever I'm doing something online and people are like, I don't really know what this video is about, or why are you posting about that? There's a good chance that it's because it's something I'm desperately passionate about and doing a lot of things on the side. And I've just forgotten to share it. I've just forgotten to say about it. And I kind of show you at the finish line, and I haven't shown you for the whole journey. So that's something that I really need to improve upon. And yeah, hold me accountable to that. That's kind of the call to action there. And finally, another question I'm going to pull from Instagram here, from my friend Susan. She's asking, would you have done anything differently at the beginning of your career? And the answer is probably no. I feel very satisfied in the experience that I've got from my design background. Originally, just a brief history for those of you who might be new around here. When I graduated, I went and worked for Disney. So graduated from graphic design, and I worked for Disney Interactive, doing a lot of design on websites and like big sort of projects and multiple languages and websites, apps, games, all sorts of things, asset creation, design, you name it. I was kind of working on it. And I always had this goal that I wanted to work for big multinational corporations. I just had this big dream involved. And previously, I'd worked at Apple in retail, and I'd done some little bits of like corporate photography experience with them as well. And I had this sort of like drive to work for the big companies, and I chased it. After I left Disney, I went and worked at Burberry, and again, I was doing design on a high level, but by this point, I started to realize that, you know what? I'm just a small cog. Like I'm replaceable. I can be replaced by another designer, and although I recognize I have my strengths and things, um, that can be trained, that can be taught to someone else, and you just start to realize that the big company isn't always the big dream that you thought it was. But if I hadn't have done that, if I hadn't have followed that sort of pathway, my sort of journey following that may not have been the same. And a lot of what I've learned through those big corporation experiences have really sort of driven my direction going forward and have allowed me to have so much more weight and backing when I've had meetings with clients, and knowing that I'm not getting screwed over on things because I know how it works on the agency side. I know how it works on the background. So there's not really a lot that I would have done. Uh, One thing that I maybe would have um, pursued would have been going to another location. I think that's changing location is a huge aspect of inspiring creativity. Um, and moving to London was a massive factor in where I am today. And likewise, when Ellie and I went traveling and then we lived in Australia for a little while, I love that experience that it brought. I do wish that we'd done it maybe earlier and for longer. That's also not to say that it can't happen again somewhere else. And yeah, we're definitely looking to travel and spend somewhere else for a long time. But yeah, other than that, I think that's a good sort of round out of things that I may have done differently or things that I'm pleased of with my journey. Okay, so let's jump into the YouTube chat now. Bear with me. This is where some technical things may go wrong. Um, and also, let's try something else out. Let's just try a little bit of background music. Let me know if you can hear this. Okay, I can hear it, so that's good. And it's playing smoothly. Cool. So let's jump up. It's great, by the way, to see so many people in here and recognize a lot of familiar names. I really appreciate all your support on this. This is, yeah, it's obviously been a very different year and difficult year. But, we're pivoting, we're trying things out and experimenting with things. So is this going to work? So if I turn on that, and I should be able to click through, hopefully. Yeah. So we've got people from Glasgow, Scotland. Hello, hello. Clive has been a long time viewer and probably one of the most frequent commenters on the channel. Hey Clive, how you doing? Hope you're good. And south of France, hi from the Philippines, from Netherlands, all sorts of people. Hello, hello. All right, so first question in here. Is the X100F that good? As you know, on the channel, I've spoken at length about the X100F. I've made plenty of videos. There's plenty of you that have probably joined the channel because you've discovered via those X100F videos. And it is a great camera. It still is a great camera. I've still never shot with the X100V. I still have my X100F. I still shoot with it occasionally. I must admit, I haven't gravitated towards it as much over the last year. And that's just because I've bought other cameras and I'm testing and trying them out at a time when I'm not really out shooting that much. So that's kind of why I haven't gravitated towards it. But it is still a great camera. one of the best things about it is the fact that it's got a fixed lens, so you just can't complicate things, and I think that's one of the greatest ways of developing further. So yeah, hopefully some of my previous videos will help sort of emphasize that point a little bit more. Okay, question in here. Big fan, thank you. Do I prefer full frame or micro four thirds? I'm gonna be kind of brutally honest, and then also kind of show an emotive side on things. So the honest aspect of whether you go full frame or micro four thirds is it doesn't matter a huge amount, because depending on what you do with the camera depends on what story and narrative you're going to create. You could have an incredible setup, but if the content's boring, if the story's boring, if you're not driving interest and whatever, then all it is just pretty boring. Quite literally, it's pretty and it's boring. Whereas if you, and by no means am I saying that full frame is the prettier one over micro four thirds, but the greater depth of field and just flexibility you have kind of does give you a little bit more of an option. So story and content is always going to be king. But on the other hand, there are things about micro four thirds that allow the camera to do so much more. Because it's a smaller sensor, it doesn't get as hot, it can operate so much more, and the technology is so much more advanced at times. It outweighs the limitations you have on the smaller sensor. So things like higher frame rates and other things like that. So on a technical aspect, you win and lose on both sides. I've had a lot of luck and love with the micro four thirds system. So right now I'm using the D.A.H, which is a micro four thirds. If you light it well and you get good light and good control of your environment, you get a beautiful picture. I'm saying that now, hoping that it's in focus and sharp and looks good. And likewise, a full frame picture, you can get the same, but the camera's going to be heavier, and you're going to get tired carrying it. So, everything's a way up. That being said, I've spent a few years running micro four thirds. I'm now running the R5, which is a full frame camera. Previously, a few years back, I was using the Sony A7R II, which was also a full frame camera. At the moment, I'm back to loving full frame, but not maybe for the reasons that you're thinking. So it's not really necessarily about the low light performance, because you can get similar low light on APS-C. I think it is just more that shallower depth of field that I'm really enjoying, especially the R5 with the good face autofocus. It creates a good separation for vlogging with. So I'm enjoying it, but I wouldn't say it's necessary at all. And if it wasn't for the experience I had on other cameras, I definitely wouldn't really recommend it, to be honest. It's just not worth spending such a huge amount if you don't really know what you're going to be making with it. Cool. Glad to hear sound is fine. Thank you, Clive. Okay, question here. Thinking of your incredible Japan rail series, thank you. Do you have another location or subject combo that you'd like to tackle in a future similar to Japan rail? That is a very interesting question. So the Japan rail series, I just absolutely love. It was one of our greatest sort of projects and achievements off our own back. So it was this idea of, we want to travel and create something and work on, a project that is close and passionate to us, in the interest of trains in Japan, very close to myself. Ellie, she loves the trains, but I don't think she's quite as excitable about the trains as I am. But anyway, as a project, I just loved it because it was completely funded, planned. Everything was all from ourselves. And I feel like we poured our heart and soul into that. I'd love to make a Japan Rail Series 2. In fact, I've been planning different maps and locations that we can visit. But likewise, I'd love to do it in Europe. I'd love to do a rail series across Europe. Europe is so well connected by train. And as a format, it just works in terms of you know, the narrative is the train schedule and the journey and going to all these different cultures and things. And yeah, I would love to do that in Europe. I'd also be very interested in some of the other locations that have, you know, train systems, but are maybe a bit sketchy at times because they're a bit rickety and whatever, but absolutely photogenic. So areas in South Asia that would just make killer content. I'd love to travel by train around all levels of it, really, from the ultimate premium on time like you get in Switzerland and Japan to some of the, you know, is this train going to arrive or not? Are we going to get a seat? You know, are we going to be riding in the night from places, you know, in other areas of the world? Yeah, definitely very interested in doing that. Question here: am I into analog photography? I've spoken about this quite a bit in previous streams, actually, and in fact the stream I did with Vince Perry, who is a fantastic photographer, both analog and digital, and I really want to start getting back into analog and film photography. I've got a few analog cameras and I've not used them for years. I got heavily involved with using a darkroom and actually processing my images back in college. When was that? 14 years ago now, I think. Yeah, had a lot of fun with that. So yeah, really looking forward to trying that out. I've even got a medium format Kodak 1 from the 1920s, which I would love to test out. I don't know how clear the lens is. You know, it's over 100 years old, but yeah, that would be a fun one to use. Okay, here is a question on multiple cameras. Hold on, let me read this. Since you have so many types of cameras, XH1, X100F, X-T4, Canon R5, Osmo Pocket, do I have any plans to downsize my gear? How do I choose which camera for which occasion? This is something that's maybe quite a common question or thought from a lot of people, because yes, I have a lot of cameras, and no, I don't take every camera out with us when we go shooting. Some cameras just lend themselves well for the scenario. Others are maybe just newer and they just have slight improvements over things. So for the moment, I'm loving the Canon R5. I'm loving the video quality that comes out of it. The lens, the RF lenses, oh my days, they are beautiful. And other cameras, I just love the form factor to it. So I may go shooting with the X100F, very small, very compact, or I may want to take the R5, or I might want to take the C70 and go and film something, you know, major with things. In terms of downsizing, I'm a bit of a hoarder. I'm terribly bad at getting rid of equipment and other things. I really attach myself to the cameras, and I have so many memories that have gone through the shutter on those cameras that I just love to hold on to them and see that. And also, I get a lot of use out of my cameras. Like the XH1 was my main photography camera for 3 years or so. Still a great camera. I could still continue to use it, if only for the fact that I've got another one that I'm, you know, using that just slightly takes priority, and I'm not going to carry, you know, the X-T4 and the XH1, for example. But my point being that I've got a lot of use over many years with those cameras, and the value of them, I think, has dropped. Whereas if I'd only used it for, say, 6 months to a year, then sure, I could probably get more value from selling it. But the fact that it is so much older, for me, I'm quite sentimental and wanting to hold on to it because of the value that it's brought me and the monetary value that would come afterwards. I almost feel like I'm just not really going to get much of an investment back. And I just prefer to hold on to them. Lenses, on the other hand, that is something that I hold on to, not so much because of sentimental reasons, but because they just hold their value so much more. And I am very agnostic to brands. I'll go with whichever camera fits my needs better. So if that's a Fuji system, if it's a Canon system, I'll use that camera. And so holding on to those lenses, if ever I come back to a system, as is the case with Canon, I still got all my EF lenses, and I've come back to using Canon a lot. and I can use those lenses. So there's value in holding on to them. Other things are a little bit difficult to hold on to more. So computers and things, I've still got most Macs that I previously owned, but I have sold other ones, and there's only so much you can keep hold of and value and everything like that. Question here on the Art and the Heart t-shirts. So of course, Art and the Heart, in fact I'm wearing one right now. That's not planned, by the way. The Art and the Heart sort of idea started a couple of years back, and it was this whole idea of wanting to create content that sorry, that music is very loud in my ear. Let's do a news track. So the whole Art and the Heart idea is about celebrating making art, and by product of that, content that gets shared online for all the right reasons. It's about doing it because you love the creative process and that you just desperately want to share things. And a way of sort of symbolizing that start, I created a t-shirt and released it. And the process of it was quite eye-opening on seeing how it is working with printing companies and other stuff. There's a lot that I would change going forward. I found myself to feel like I was being very difficult with the print companies, because I was very particular on the quality, on the sort of background of the t-shirts and everything about it. I didn't really have a process that made me feel like it was a shared goal on the quality and value of things, and that potentially put me off a little bit. But I think I just need to, you know, work with good suppliers on stuff, because the eventual quality was great. I loved the t-shirt quality. I loved the product. But the process to get there was quite a marathon, if we'll call it that. Okay. Thanks for enjoying the videos and watching the old ones. This is a topic that's fairly similar on myself. I really enjoy watching back older travel videos, and it really just kind of grounds me and reminds me of why I make the videos that I make, because I always make them first and foremost for me. As selfish as that sounds, I make videos that I personally would want to watch, but I feel like that's how to sort of continue to do things without, you know, losing your track on things, losing your way. Because if you're making the things that you want to watch, then you're always going to enjoy it. And likewise, there'll be other audiences who will enjoy it, and you know, hopefully you enjoy the videos as well. So yeah, I do enjoy watching the old ones. In fact, I was watching the Taipei vlog the other day, and desperately missing traveling in Taipei, and loved all the images from it. And yeah, it just reminds me of, you know, travel and photography. They are huge parts of my life, and especially at a time like now where we're spending so much time indoors, it's hugely I guess warming for me to be able to watch back and say, oh, I'm so glad I documented that. I'm so glad that I captured those scenes. You don't necessarily have to share the videos that you've made, just make the videos. But I can't recommend enough just making videos and photos, and have something to look back on, because if you don't, you will regret it. You'll miss it. Okay, let's have a look here. Just very concerned that everything's frozen a little bit. Hopefully it can still see. Okay. To start off photography, should I go for the most expensive camera? I'm planning on saving for a Canon EOS Rebel. Okay. Let's split this in two parts. Should you go for the most expensive camera? No. That's just going to hold you back, because the most expensive cameras are ridiculous. Very expensive. But that being said, I wouldn't always recommend going for the cheapest camera. It's all about finding your balance between where do you sit comfortably on, you know, how much you'd like to spend versus how much you can spend. And if you can, always try and just go to the top end of what you can spend, because The longevity, generally more expensive cameras do have more features and will last a bit longer. The longevity you can have on it will pay back dividends, whereas the cheapest camera, it may appear to be the cheapest camera, but it's actually using the same processor of a camera maybe 2-3 years beforehand. And so you could buy that camera that has more features, but the same actual image sensor and processor, and buy it secondhand or buy it older. So cheap and brand new doesn't always equate to being the best option. Yeah, it's a tricky one, but I would absolutely wholeheartedly steer you away from buying an expensive camera just because you think it's going to get results. If you're just starting out, it's really not going to make a difference. You need to get to know the camera, you need to get to know light and study photography and how it works. I myself am always learning. I've been doing this for 15 years now or so, 16 years. I can't remember how long it's been. And I'm still improving, always improving. If you're not improving, then something's not really working. And I haven't got there by buying the most expensive camera. And likewise, you don't need to upgrade all the time. I know I have recently upgraded a lot of my cameras, but it's been a long-term plan of generally around 2 to 3 years. But that's also because I'm using this as a business. I'm thinking of things on a business sense of, you know, how to manage the cash flow and expenses of things that fit in with everything on so many other levels than just enjoying photography. So yeah, there are extra decisions involved. Don't necessarily follow your favorite photographers, YouTubers or whatever because they're using a particular camera. Likewise, a particular camera isn't always going to get you the same results back. It's I feel like we stress this point a lot all over the place. But just to reiterate it, it really doesn't matter too much. But if you can spend a bit more, it helps. Hope that doesn't sound like it's contradicting itself. Okay. Best cheap camera to use as a webcam. This is something I've been talking a lot about with close friends of mine who are looking to have kind of similar setups to this, and for them this camera setup is overkill, but at the same time they are, you know, working from home and attending remote meetings and all sorts, and yeah, they need to have like a good camera setup. So options, depending on what you're spending, something like a Canon M50 is a great option that you can plug in over USB, or you can get an HDMI capture card. A Fuji X-T100 or X-T200. I think those have even got USB mode or webcam mode within them. Sony A6500, I believe it is, or A6300. Those would be good options as well. Yeah, if you wanted to jump into those. And there's even a super chat here. Ooh, I think that might have messed up the color there. But thank you, Ali, for the donation there. So thoughts on Sony cameras whilst we're talking about that. I think the Sony cameras, there's so many choices and so many options to get involved with photography and filmmaking. And that's both a good thing and a hindrance. It's a good thing because there's a camera for near enough everyone from Sony, and their lens offerings have grown, and there's so many more options now for various different Sony cameras and shooting styles. But at the same time, it can be a hindrance because you don't know where to look, you don't know where to begin. So it's a double-edged sword. I have used Sony in the past. I enjoy a lot of content from other people who shoot with Sony. I don't use Sony anymore. I struggled a little bit with the color and some of the ergonomics. Some of the buttons themselves and the camera itself just felt a little bit fiddly and just not quite as robust. I think they've improved a lot since I've left shooting with my Sony. So I think they're great cameras. They push the boundaries on a lot of the specs and everything. But at the same time, as I say all the time, it's not necessarily about the specs, it's about the usability. How comfortable do you trust the camera? How honest does the camera feel in your hands? Can you get what you're thinking out through the camera? And at times I struggle to do that with the Sony, and I've been able to do that with other cameras. But your mileage may vary on that. Okay, I'm just gonna scroll up because I realized I was scrolling ahead on the chat here. Interesting thing here. Ironically, me using the X100F is what made me buy the X Pro 2. You know what? I fell in love with the X Pro 2. That was one of the first Fuji interchangeable cameras that I used long term, I guess, when Fuji Australia loaned it to me. I loved that camera so much. It was such a great camera. I've not shot with the X Pro 3, but that is yeah, it would be a good option to try. Yeah, always got my eye towards the X Pro. It's such a unique format and so stealthy. It's great for street use. Okay, so here's one. Do you have any videos about the iPad control that I'm doing for the stream? So that is, of course, this controller that I'm using to control the stream. So if you've seen in my streaming setup video, I've documented quite thoroughly about all of the different things that I've got running to get this stream up and running. Since that video, it has evolved and changed, and I knew that was going to happen, but it has happened exponentially more than I expected. So I'm now actually using a teleprompter. So I've got a screen here so I can see the chat as I'm looking through. So if it looks a bit weird, like I'm able to read, but I'm still looking into the camera, that's because I'm using a teleprompter, which is pretty cool. It's changed the game on doing meetings, Zoom calls and things like that, because I can give eye contact and the camera just sits behind. Likewise, my iPad controller has changed and evolved. I've added different menus and features and control settings that I've been doing. So I'm weighing up if I'm going to make a video about it. For one thing, if it's something that you guys would be interested in, and secondly, how and when to do that video, because it keeps changing and I don't know when to pull the trigger and say, okay, here's a good point of yes, I can make that video. So if it's something that's interesting to a lot of people, I'd imagine the fact that you're watching a live stream potentially is a sign of the fact that you're interested in the live stream content. But I do know that a lot of my audience on the sort of regular videos and people who maybe aren't tuning in today don't really care too much for live streaming setup or working from home setup. And yeah, when things get larger in terms of a channel scope, I have to weigh up, is it something that I would personally want to watch? In which case, yes. Is it also something that makes good business sense of, are other people going to watch it? And that's usually where I have to draw the line on, am I going to make a video on this? Am I not? There's a lot of effort that goes into it. So yeah, let me know if you want to see iPad controller. I will contemplate it and see if it's something that I can fit in sometime. This is an interesting one. If I could only choose one video, what one would I be most proud of? Made in Japan, hands down, is probably my favorite piece of video content that we've put on the channel. I think Ellie would say the same. As a trip, it was just so enjoyable. The outcome, the journey, and we recorded our sort of commentary and behind the scenes on that trip and video as well. And the whole outcome of it was a chaotic journey for one thing, but the whole outcome, everything that happened, it just fell into place, and I loved it. As a rather timely piece, it's actually currently sitting very close to 1 million views, which is phenomenal. I'm over the moon about that, because as a video, I really thought this was going to be a personal passion project. I thought it was going to be one of those videos that I would enjoy and get a lot of fun making and experiencing, but I would struggle to translate it and get other people excited about. I hadn't made a video about arts and crafts or anything like that on the channel before, and it just took off. So yeah, I'm just stoked about that. I desperately want to make more videos like Made in Japan, of the same narrative style, but also just bigger and better projects. I really enjoy making the vlogs, but I also really enjoy those bigger sort of signature pieces throughout the year. I just have to find the narrative and the story to tell, and that takes time. Oh, there's quite a few questions in here. Question in here on what would I tell someone starting a YouTube channel? Again, this is something that comes up a lot in Q&As, and I think my advice still remains the same, and I've referenced it in previous Q&As as well. You just have to get started with it, but make the content for yourself first and foremost. I think I've reiterated that enough throughout this stream. Yeah, make it for yourself. You will enjoy it. It will never feel like work, and hopefully there'll be other people who will enjoy it as well. Okay, the chat has scrolled. A lot of people loving Made in Japan. I'm so glad that it resonated with people. It was, yeah, just such a great project. If you haven't seen the commentary video, it's a lengthy one. It's about an hour or so. But Ellie and I really sort of like dove into the behind the scenes, because as I mentioned, it was a chaotic journey to make the project happen and to get it all pieced together and working, but it just came together, and yeah, loved it. Glad to hear it's looking good on an OLED screen as well. I've personally never actually watched it on a big OLED TV. The only OLED that I got would be the iPhone. So yeah, that's good to know. Thanks. Okay. No worries at all. Yeah, so Super Chat is only available in certain countries, which I only really realized recently. Yeah, do not worry about that at all. This is not a place for tips or whatever. It's great that YouTube allowed that, but I just like to chat and hang out with you guys. Okay. Craig, what is one video that, given the chance, you'd love to redo with so many years experience under your belt? Oh, Craig, that's a good question. There's been a few trips and events that I've been a part of, and I could either improve upon them because of newer sort of experience or newer techniques, but also just newer cameras and newer lenses and things. Ones that come to mind, the rally in Dakar, which was in Peru in 2018. That was a great experience. It was so fast, it was so rapid, both the rally front of it, but also the trip in itself was such a short, hectic trip. And it was difficult to know quite what I could or couldn't do in terms of, you know, where can we film the cars? How is the process going to run? And that's common for those types of trips where you're on someone else's time. You don't know what you're allowed to do, and you don't know what is coming up. You don't know the timeline of things. But having done that, I think I would probably approach things slightly differently and get even more involved in the cars and things. But also, it was just such an enjoyable trip. I just love to do it again. The motorsport photography aspect, I loved it. It was so much fun. I always got involved in sports events around wherever it was that I was staying at the time. So if I'm in London, any sort of big public sports events, I always got involved to go and shoot them and get photos of them. And yeah, something like Dakar Rally is like a massive event on the calendar. I've just recently started watching the F1 Drive to Survive, and it's got me so excited about F1 and just the filmmaking aspect of it. I'd love to make something similar to that. I think that would be a huge project to work with a team on. And yeah, it just reminds me of the Dakar experience, definitely. Question here about the M1. Do the capabilities of a new M1X chip interest for video production, as they seem to promise a lot? So I'm assuming we're talking about the rumored M1X, unless it's been launched within the hour or so, which would be interesting because I'm very keen to get involved with whatever Apple do with an iMac using the M1. So I've got a Mac Mini as an M1, and I'm using that as my admin machine. For the moment, I'm using it more than my MacBook Pro. I've been editing video on it. I've been doing all of the things that I was previously doing with my MacBook Pro. I'm using the Mac Mini, and it's holding up to the same sort of level, but at the same time, I recognize that my MacBook Pro had so much more, or it was held back so much more, and that's where I'm looking forward to something like an iMac. I've just come to accept that the MacBook Pro, as much as it's called a Pro device, in terms of the cameras that I'm using, the quality and the speed at which that I'd like to be working, I just need to get back onto a desktop machine. And so the Mac Mini is going to sit in the background over the coming years, doing things like re-encoding footage, creating proxies, doing massive sort of file transfers, synchronizing between devices so that Ellie and I can work interchangeably on things. It's going to be doing a lot of the grunt work behind the scenes. And then hopefully something like an iMac will take over as my big sort of creative powerhouse. I'm very keen to see what Apple are going to do on the graphics front with the iMacs. That's something that hasn't really been addressed with the new M1 Macs. So far though, I am above and beyond blown away with the M1. The most notable thing, it is silent. So as I'm streaming here, and I'm using the A10 Mini Extreme as the hardware to do all the streaming. I've got cameras on, got lights on, microphone, everything like that. And I'm managing the multi-screen aspect with the Mac Mini, and the fans haven't come on. In fact, I never really hear the fans of the Mac Mini. The silent aspect to it is just gold. When you're recording video, you don't have that hissing and whatever in the background. Yeah, and to have that on something when you're doing some really heavy video work, I can't wait. I really can't wait. Oh, we have another super chat here. Thank you for that. I need to adjust the colors on this. So again, as I said, this is working with the sort of plugin extension that has been created by Aaron Parecki, and I've tweaked it and adjusted it and made it fit with my sort of style and things. But there was no way of testing the super chat aspect because you only get it when it happens. So I will get some screenshots of this and make some tweaks. But anyway, the question, I'm struggling to read because it's colored it awkwardly. Hello from Russia. Hiya. I've been watching for a long time. You have very stylish blogs and very light and no pressure. I also get high on trains in Asia. Thank you and keep up the good work. Yeah, don't we all get high on it? It's I mean, I wonder if we all get high on it, or maybe we're in a small club. But thank you for the compliment and thank you for the super chat. What is my opinion on mobile device-based filmmaking? I want to get an iPhone 12 to use as a camera. The smartphone market has exploded in, I've been saying this for a few years now, I guess, but honestly, it has just rocketed in quality. From the iPhone 11, and I guess even the 10s, so what was that, 2018? From that year onwards, across all brands and devices, they got really good at managing the highlight control, and just the overall dynamic range of the picture and the video and everything. And so the sort of most notable aspects of where mobile filmmaking let itself down in terms of the quality on blown out highlights and those types of things, they were all removed or at least heavily reduced with devices from 2018 onwards. And so the only thing I'd say that you're really sort of lacking when you come to using a smartphone for filmmaking is lens options, audio controls to an extent, although you can get good microphones that plug into smartphones now. Yeah, you're only really sort of missing on some of that lens and focal aspects. And so you can generate great stories and great content and films with smartphones. Yeah, I'd say go for it. I've used my phone a lot to film. I have, you know, these ideas in my head when we're out just shopping, and I think like, oh, the light's great. I'd love to make a vlog here, and I sometimes think, you know what, I'll just do it on my iPhone. And I might do that as we start to get back out and about. If I just happen to not have a camera with me one day. The one thing I would say that lets itself down on smartphone filmmaking and photography, and this is for all devices, doesn't matter which brand you're using, is the usability aspect of just holding it. You know, when you're out and about and you hold a camera and you go and take photos, you're holding that camera in your phone, in your hand. You may have a strap on or something like that, and you've just got it down, you know, by your side. But when you're using a phone, you don't really get straps for your phone. If you're holding it in your hand or even just having the screen active, it's a very active device. You have to be delicate in the way that you don't want to touch things. You don't want to just open other apps. And likewise, you need to use your smartphone for things like maps and other things and messaging and whatever. Because it does so much, that device is no longer, well, it's a multi-use device. It's not a single use like a camera. And so that's one of the areas that really lets you down, where it's just a bit of a hassle and a bit of a faff. So keep that in mind, and that's probably the thing that frustrates me the most if I am making stuff on smartphones, is just switching between devices and having something dedicated to it. But the quality and the content that you can get from it, top notch. Quite literally, on an iPhone, top notch. Cool. Oh, chat has jumped ahead again. Okay. Interesting one. When looking at other people's photos, what is my pet peeve, biggest pet peeve? Probably wonkiness. If something is not quite straight, if the horizon is just off, or if the perspective of things is just kind of like, you know, very wide angle and just a bit shifted, if anything is just uncomfortable about the view of it, that's probably what bothers me the most when I look at an image, and I spot it immediately. Correcting those things is very easy to do in Lightroom and other editing software. And I know that it's not always easy to do in camera, but anything that's like just slightly off center or, yeah, wonkiness is probably my biggest pet peeve. Okay. What parts of Japan or Japanese culture would I like to explore and film? You know, there's a whole area in the sort of mid to northern part of Honshu, the main island, and yeah, the whole sort of like northwest, I just haven't explored. So I guess like in the Tohoku region is, yeah, I've only really been to Matsushima, Fukushima, and Ginza Onsen. But other than that, I haven't really explored too much. Yeah, whole areas around there that I'd love to explore. And the same for Hokkaido, is I've only really been to Sapporo and Hakodate. So there's, you know, a wild eastern side of Hokkaido which I would love to explore and film, definitely. And I guess if we're gonna go other areas, Kyushu, I've not explored. I've seen a lot of Japan, but the more that you see of Japan, the more that you realize there's more to see. It's proper Dunning-Kruger country. There's so much more to learn with it. London Day meetup. I would love that. I can't wait until it's safe to do so, and we're available to have a group meetup. I'd love to have this type of you know, chat and community in person, because it's not just about me. Like, I know this is my channel, whatever, but there's community and there's conversation that's happening. And whenever I've done meetups in the past, the friends that come about from that is so valuable. I've made great friends from the meetups, and likewise, I still see people who attended the meetups, and they are interacting with each other on Instagram, and they I think even a relationship has formed from one of my meetups, which is great. Yeah, there's so much more community aspect, and I would love to do that in London. I just don't know when. I'm hoping this year. Maybe uh, let's try an idea of like September or so. That might be something to to keep an eye on it. Even if it's just for the idea of designing the poster, that's always a fun aspect. How is working with international organizations such as Tokyo Gov? So I did a sponsor post on my Instagram recently. Oh, cheers from South California, SoCal. That's an area that I need to explore more of, San Diego and areas like that. Working with international organizations, you learn a lot from the cultures and the working cultures, and it's different every time. In the case of working with Japanese companies, I think I've read this somewhere and I've said it multiple times. Japan is simultaneously 100 years in the future and 100 years in the past. They are at both ends of the spectrum of doing things so advanced, yet also so backwards. Either tons and tons of paperwork, and even fax machines, that's a common thing. Sometimes you have to fax things in Japan. Or it's, hyper futuristic, and Japan as it's known. So yeah, it can be difficult. I'd say the most notable thing when working with Japanese companies is communication. Every step of the way is communicated and is sort of confirmed and reconfirmed. Every little detail, which when I think about it is something that I'm very prone towards as well. And I think it's a good match. The fact that I enjoy it and the fact that I'm naturally driven towards looking at the finer details of every aspect of a project, is really comforting to work with someone else who's also seeing that. On the flip side, I've worked with other companies in other parts of the world that are very one-line email, and you think like, did you read what I said? There's a lot of reconfirming that has to happen from my end because I'm not sure that they've actually understood and followed suit. But it's different every client, every project, definitely. Question here on if I would travel to more major cities across the West Coast, such as San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle. I made a whole series about that trip, quite literally going from Los Angeles up through San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Trinidad. You can go and check that out on the channel. It's just called the West Coast Road Trip Series. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'd love to do it again. In fact, I'd love to do that with beer in mind, doing like a beer journey of getting to know all the different breweries along that route. It feels wrong to call it like a beer road trip because drinking and driving is not two things that go together, but it would be like a beer-based road trip. Okay, I realize we are coming up to an hour on this stream. In fact, just over an hour. So I'm just going to take some time on the last couple of questions, and then we will wrap it up for the hangout. But yeah, it's been fun. So yeah, this is good. Okay. Since trip to Morocco was cut short, am I planning to go back? And are there any other African countries that are on my list to travel to? I have no plans for any travel anywhere at the moment, but there's definitely places that I'd love to return to. Pretty much everywhere I've been, I would love to return to at some point. Morocco, definitely. It was a beautiful location and culture. I really, really got along with the people there. And I was gutted that we didn't get to do any of the desert-based activities. So we were planning to go and camp out in the Sahara for a few days and just experience desert, pure desert, for a few days, and photography-wise, night photography, astrophotography. That would have been such a great experience. And of course, it got cut short. So I'd love to go back and do that. I'd also like to explore more around Marrakesh and Fez. Marrakesh, we were only there for like a day or two, and I really enjoyed it. The street sort of vibe of things. It was phenomenal for photography. And Fez, again, didn't get a huge amount of time because that was when things all started to go down in terms of the trip having to be cut short and whatever. We were in Fez at the time. So yeah, I'd definitely love to go back. Likewise, at other areas in Africa, I would love to do some safaris, just areas, say for example, Kruger National Park. Yeah, just any sort of like wild vistas of like, what am I looking for? Wildlife photography. That's yeah, I'd love that so much. It'd be an excuse to buy a super long lens. But yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Any plans on visiting Jordan in the future? I have a friend who lives near the region and has been to Jordan in, I forget the name of the deserts around there. But yeah, loved his photography there. So yeah, would love to go. Again, no plans as such. And what happened to the Twitch channel? So I still have the Twitch channel. I have, as I've mentioned many times, I use Twitch as a way to test things out on the stream and have fun playing games. It's like a good excuse for doing that. This past month has just been pretty busy on a lot of sideline commercial work that I've been doing. So I've been doing a lot of teaching and training, and I've been doing a lot of remote-based work that isn't actually publicly facing. So that's been an interesting one. It's just distracted me away. I'd like to stream some games soon, and yeah, just kind of leave it as a casual hangout. Twitch is a fun place. I'm not really making any sort of promises or gains there. It's just fun to hang out once in a while and yeah, get it all set up. Alrighty, so on Clive's note, heading off, I am also going to call it time here on this. So the intention is that I only ever really wanted to do like an hour or so as a hangout. I feel like that's a good roundabout way that if people wanted to rewatch this, they can do. So thanks Clive for joining. As I said at the start, Clive is one of the most active commenters and also one of the most active in the chat today as well. So yeah, we will catch you again soon. And I'm going to end the stream here. Let me turn that off. And this is where the technical aspect could go completely wrong as I do my closing video and stuff. But anyway, I just want to thank you again for joining today. It's been a great little catch up, and wherever you are in the world, I hope you stay safe. And if it's time for dinner, let's go grab a plate. That's what I'm going to do right now. All right. Thanks for watching, everyone. Catch you soon. Is this going to work?